I'm DadPool. Tonight is my first time doing this sort of podcast live stream with a topic, and I'm glad to introduce and welcome my good friend David Steele from Real Talks. How's it going, Dave?
I very well, thank you. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. I appreciate you coming on today and just having a conversation, and it's gonna be lots of fun, I think.
I definitely believe it's going to be fun.
So tonight's topic, we're gonna talk about the streaming at home versus going to the movie theaters, the experience, whether which ones do we prefer to go to, and also touch on the topic of movies and choices for which ones go to streaming and which ones go to theaters, and the impact on that film's success, and why it's overrated to think that going to streaming is such a bad idea. But that's my opinion. But we're going to discuss it. Also, anybody in the chat, you want to discuss it? We'd like to hear your thoughts and on this topic as well. So make sure you follow along and interact. That's what we're here for. So when it comes to movies, Dave, and we've talked about this before on different and on your show, in some spaces, and even back and forth today before going live. Uh, which do you prefer? Are you an at home guy, or are you a going to the movie theater experience kind of guy? And we could talk about this both pre and post COVID as well, because I know COVID kind of changed a lot of people's mindsets about going to the movies. So we can discuss that.
I
What's your
think
preference?
that for me, I'm a theatrical guy.
Okay.
Um, I so when I go to the movies for the first time, I consider them like memories. Um, because I can tell you who I went to go see it with. I can tell you the film I went to see. I can tell you an experience I may or may not have had from that. And I think that honestly, there's nothing like you can have the best sound system in the world,
Hmm.
and you can have the biggest screen and the best sound system and everything else, but there's nothing that replicates the experience of actually being in a movie theater with a bunch of strangers with the same goal watching a film that you have not seen before, and there's a first time for it. Um, there's so many. I remember when I was two. I mean, this is gonna date me, guys, but when I was two, I my grandmother took me to see Star Wars. So do the math there. But I
That's
mean, you know, yeah, I was yeah. So I'm 47, but
same. Same.
it's one of those things where you get these experiences like a Endgame. You get an experience like a No Way Home. I just saw Oppenheimer when it came out. I did the whole Barbie Oppenheimer thing the same day, and the IMAX was just incredible. And I think that for me, it's 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 one of those things you can't duplicate or replicate. And I think that's the biggest thing.
Oh, I
So
agree. I can remember back when I was a kid. We would go to the drive-in. I know drive-ins are kind of an obsolete thing these days, but I, that was probably one of the most memorable experiences. Just hopping in the van, popping open the back of the hatch, blanket, pillow, bring your own snacks, and hope your car battery is gonna die, because that's typical. If your car battery doesn't die during a drive-in movie, then you really haven't lived the whole experience. But just the memories. My dad would fall asleep, and it'd just be me and my mom finishing up the movies, both double features, 2, 3 in the morning. So I mean, you can't take those away. And then even as a kid, my love for movies, my mom would let me skip school, and she'd buy my ticket for Nightmare on Elm Street. And I was just talking about this the other day when because Nightmare on Elm Street Part Five released a few days ago, 1989. So I remember skipping school, and my mom dropped me off at the local mall to go see it, and it's just ending up meeting people there. and then becoming classmates, like finding out we were classmates, starting that school next year. So that was really really good experiences. To be
I
honest though, my mindset has shifted a little bit though.
Yeah. So the one drive-in experience I had, I went to, um, it was 1991, and I saw, talk about a double feature. I
Oh, Jahan.
saw Hello, I saw Dances with Wolves and Silence and Lambs back to back.
Oh, that's
That was
that's,
crazy. Now
that's a
you got to
long
understand.
that's a long night.
Yeah, I was 13 years old, and Silence and Lambs is probably one of my top 3 all-time films. And I'm all about I'm that person that looks into everything behind the scenes about the film. I want to
Mhm.
know the stories, I want to know about this, and I had read the book prior to the film too, but it was crazy. So I think that it was really interesting. But yes, no. When you're talking about drive-ins, I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly what you mean.
But it's just I wish there was more. I wish if I had the money, I'd probably open one up because it's one of those experiences that you just don't have now, and that's the sign of the times. How everything transferred from like VHS to DVD. There's always that transition, and to bring it back around on topic, I think the streaming experience is something that's cemented as a mainstay. I don't think it's ever going to go away. It's only going to get bigger and better, and more studios are going to be prone to want to just put those out. Maybe same day, like it's happened in the past. Where they say Black Widow or say Dune, because despite Dune coming out on Max the same day it came out in theaters, it did pretty well. We were just talking
Yeah,
about Dune too long ago.
yeah. I think that it's interesting because when streaming first began, and this is what people kind of want to say forget, but when streaming first began, Netflix was the only game in town. And if you were going to stream, you were going to put it on Netflix. And then slowly but surely over the past 10, 15, 20 years, we now are in what's known as the streaming wars. Okay, you have studios like Apple. Well, you have Apple Plus, you have Amazon, you have Hulu, you have Peacock, you have Max with Warner Brothers. You have all of these things. So you're not only are you vying for eyes, but you're vying for people's dollars too.
Yep.
And that's the important thing. So before, and what you were talking about, so the theatrical window, so anybody who's not familiar with the term theatrical window, it was 20 years ago. If a movie came out, let's say it's Nightmare on Elm Street 5, Part 5, okay? 25 years ago, what would happen is it would be in theaters for 90 days. That was the theatrical window. After that, okay, it would go away out of the theaters, and then maybe 3 to 4 months later, you would get it on VHS. And then you would go to your local, video store, Blockbuster, or Hollywood, where you either rent it or buy it. Okay. Then, as this started to be, the Blu-rays started to come in and the DVDs started to come in, those VHSs, as you made mention, go to DVDs. And then it's still the same window, but it's in a different format. And then, fast forward for all these years, and then of course you have COVID, and then that completely changed everything. And so the theatrical window went from 90 days or 3 months to 45 days. And when that happened, it changed everything because then what you saw is now you have movies that are, you know, out on Blu ray, digital, and ready to be purchased in 6 weeks. And instead of that 3 month period. And so it really depends on what the movie is, and the studio, and there's a lot of other factors there. But so did you ever have Netflix? Like, do you remember growing up and having like when Netflix first came out?
Yep, you'd select the what disc you wanted mailed. It come in that little red square envelope with the peel off sticker. You watch it and make sure you send it back, or my parents would flip if I had late charges. Not even a Netflix. I'm talking like when we had like a video store. Man, if I had 2 days to watch it, I better watch it in 2 days. And same for like games, because you can rent games from a video store. So rent a video game, you better make sure you're done playing all you can in 2 days. But yeah, Netflix when it was a disc was very cool. I actually, when they ended the disc, I still have a disc. It's Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Nice.
It's still. I have to find that because I'm sure that's probably something good to look at. I know I have it, but it's still in its red sheath, protective covering, and it's just a disc. That's all. But
Nice.
to see it grow so much from mail in to now a digital online only service, that's it's pretty epic.
Yeah, no, I think the thing is that it's one of those things where, no, I'm definitely not rich. I can tell
What's
you that
up,
right
Ben?
now. Hey, Ben, what's going on? No, I'm definitely not rich. um, I wish I were, but I'm not. Um, Thank you, I appreciate that. Um, but yeah, so I think the thing is, as the theatrical window um, went down, and now it's one of those things where it's we've gotten to a point now where it's interesting because there's a whole different dynamic to the theatrical and streaming, and that's this. When I was speaking to the number of eyes, is dollars. So if you only have, let's say, $40 or $50 to spend per month, okay, and now we're in the every I have these, I live right down the street from a Regal, so I'm lucky, but I have their big Crown Club type of thing. And so if you only have 25 or $50, it's what do you spend it on? Do you spend it on a club type of membership where you get to go see all these movies as many times as you want, or do you spend it on, let's say, a Max that's $12.99, a Netflix that's $12.99, a a Peacock that's $7.99, whatever it is, until you get to that $50 limit? And I
Right.
think there's something else to be said about that because while there's a lot of variety there, I still think that the theatrical, you know, because there's nothing like anticipating a movie, whatever it is. And we've all done it. And I'm guilty, it's like, whether it's The Flash or, Barbie or Oppenheimer or Turtles or whatever it is. And it's like, I can't wait for this to come out. And yeah, because the only revenue that um, the streamers get is by your subscription. And this is why that they added ad tiers. And it's like, okay, I'm already watching enough ads on television already. Do I really want to pay for more ads? So
See, I don't mind the ads. So when it comes, I know that's a lot of people's complaints or turn-offs from streaming. I prefer their experience all day. That's Ben's opinion. That's what he says. So yeah, thank you for that, Ben. Appreciate it. But getting back, what was Oh,
yeah,
oh
no,
the oh the
it's go ahead.
oh oh no. The anticipation I don't think is the same anymore though, because if you know that a movie is going to be coming out on streaming or going to the movie theater, so now you have that option. Streaming gave a lot of options, and to get back to us, okay, the ads. So people complain about the ads as well, and I'll get back to that. I don't mind the ads. So if I'm watching Tubi, which is a free service, thousands of movies in their catalog, really good selections, uh, from Hollywood hits to B-rated independent documentaries, which I'm a big documentary fan, so I love that section of it. Um, I don't mind an ad here and there, you know, peeking through because something we did as a childhood is watching TV around the television, sitting on the couch with family. Tons of commercials. We didn't have TiVo where you can fast forward through everything. We had 5 channels on a dial TV. So we sat through and watched commercials. So commercials and ads, and I know the ads are going. It's watching them will keep that service keep going, give it life because it creates the revenue. Just like Pluto TV. When I found out that that was actually a thing, and I have it on my TV now, the app. I'm not watching anything. I'm watching Pluto TV before I go to bed at night. I'm popping it on the Godzilla channel or the '80s channel or the horror channel or the comedy channel. There's so many good movies that come on, and you get an ad, but they're like 20 seconds. Um, I don't mind that stuff. And people, I know attention spans these days are very minimal, and they get reckless and they get antsy when their content's not going. I understand that, and I'm not. I don't disagree with your opinion. I understand. I was at that stage in my life at one point where I was antsy as well. But you just learn to adapt to the times. Um,
Oh no, I totally agree with you.
so
I
like having
totally
that
agree with
break
you.
though, having that break to be able to pause it, you can't do that in a movie theater experience. If you're watching a 3 hour movie, you either have to. I know there's an app that tells you when you can go, but that's not always accurate. Um, so you either have to pick it right to go to the bathroom and then hope you didn't miss anything and then come back, or you stick with it. At least at home, you have that comfort of I can pause it, get up, handle anything that comes at life. So there's always those pros and cons, like the title, pros and cons of this of enjoying a movie, whether you're going to a theater or whether you're watching at home. I think they balance each other out. And I think the statistics now is it's almost 50-50 as far as what the population prefers now, whether it's the movie going experience or the at home streaming. Whereas before it was almost 80% of movie people that want us, they preferred the in movie. They didn't really care for streaming. I think that's leveled out now. Not only, I think with the selection that we have, the different offerings we can subscribe to, I guess, and watch.
No, I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you because it's one of those things where, and you're right. I think we have gotten to the point where our society is so we want everything yesterday that it's like if it's and the same can be true honestly for like the radio in your car. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, because the minute that an ad comes up, guess what? You're changing the channel. You
Change the
don't want to
channel.
sit through that. And so, in once again, to your point, you're absolutely right because those little ads, you watching those little ads, keep the lights on. And I think that a lot of people don't understand that, or they think, well, how could this happen? And ad revenue, I understand it's not the best thing, but it's a necessity. It's a needed thing because if they didn't, a lot of these things would not be able to continue. Um, and I think that that's why there's a little bit of a premium to it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And look, I remember those days of having only 5 channels and before the remote controls, and if you wanted to change a channel, you had to get up and I remember those days too. And it's one
Yep.
of those things where our culture has gotten so fast, whether it's our phones or our computers or we have tablets now. I mean, it's just crazy that it's gotten almost too fast. And one of the things that speaking of streaming is you're having these films now go to streaming that much faster. And I mean, they're making that much more revenue there because they're on the stream that fast if you're unable to see it.
Yep.
Um, so I think it's there are definitely things. And you got to understand too, there are people out there that can't get out to the movie theater, right?
Yep.
They want to watch a good movie, but they can't get out to the movie theater. And it's like, well, how are we able to make them happy and please them too? And I think that that's something else to keep in mind. And it's one of those things where it's always a good thing when you're able to do both. But I think for us personally, being quote old school,
Mhm.
having all these things, and then coming into it, today's generation is like, oh, that'll be on streaming in 3 weeks. And it's like, you're so lucky. you
Yeah.
know, it's like social media. I didn't have social when I was growing up. That no way. Twitter. Good luck with Twitter, or X or whatever it is now. It's like you had Facebook, but that's the thing.
I had MySpace.
Yeah, MySpace. Exactly.
MySpace. That's
Exactly. But I mean, that's the thing, though. It's gotten so quick, and there's so many of them that you're like, and I think that's where we take everything for granted. And when you start,
kind of spoils us too, Dave. It kind of spoils us. So we get into that like too it's some things are too good for us, and we kind of get too used to it and expect way too much out of this. So it's tough. It's tough to, like I said, I'm not here to judge anyone's opinions. I'm sure our opinions are different on things, just like mine and the next person that's watching this. Just gotta respect, and like I said, bring substance. Like you mentioned earlier, if you're gonna have an argument or a disagreement, or there's a reason why you gave a movie a one or a two, have some substance to that score, to that rating, to that review. Because if you're just sitting there saying, I gave it a four, that's it, because it's on streaming, because it's on, it didn't go to the movie. Well, it's not a good, it's not good
no, I
enough.
I agree with you.
Not good
I
enough.
totally agree with you because it's one of those things where and once again, this goes back to I think that the general audience, 6 or 7 out of 10 people, I'll say, if you don't know how a film's made, if you don't know how little things are done, sit down and watch it because that gives you a lot of insight too. And I think filmmakers, this is what people don't, I won't say don't, sometimes they don't understand. A director does everything for a reason. Everything. Whether it's camera shots, whether it's music, whether it's dialogue, but whatever it is. So when you're watching that and you go, why did they do that? Why did they make that selection during that time? You go, oh, okay. And then that changes your view. And, I think that's an important thing because if you understand what the director or the EP, the executive producer's mentality was behind it, it changes your point of view and how you watch the movie. And you go, wow. Now, and it's so difficult to reach the pinnacle of whatever you're doing. It really is. I mean, we always talk about the great directors or actors or, writers or anything, but you know, it's one of those things too where they had a lot of failures. And those failures or experiences are actually what is leading you to actually get that one success. And then once you get that one success is okay, can they duplicate it? Because you don't want to think of yourself as like a fluke. And then when they duplicate it, they're like, oh, okay. And they're able to do it time after time after time because they have the prior failures and knowledge of whatever it is. Um, but yeah, I love. So truth be told, when I was 19, I had the pleasure of being in a quote film class in my high school, and
Okay.
in this class, I sat down and I watched some what we're going to call, for the record, classic, but they really aren't that classic movies. I'm talking about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, The Deer Hunter, The Shawshank Redemption. That dates me, but okay. Uh, Star Wars, The Godfather. But we didn't watch these movies just to watch them. We watched it for the theatrical elements. We watched them for the themes, why they did what they did, and everything else. And then we were able to basically dissect them and do that and go. And that's where your appreciation comes and go, oh, okay. So I was lucky, and I've ever loved film ever since. So
Yeah, I think to kind of double down on the top, I don't remember a streaming movie that made me just say wow and like make it that memorable to where I consider it like one of the greatest moments in my life. I could think of going to the movies though. I remember those times uh, when Man of Steel first came out. My son, I think, was like 3, almost just about 4. So he was young. His first movie. We're like, we, we got to break it. We got to break him in. We gotta get him used to going out and being, hopefully being not so destructive and running wild. So we got dressed up in our Superman matching shirts and whatnot. Went to go see Man of Steel, and it was a perfect. Not only was it a perfect movie, I do love Man of Steel, but like that experience of us watching it together and just kind of shocking me to say, wow, he sat through a 2-hour movie with no issues, not even having to go to the bathroom, and not even saying screaming or being disruptive was really awesome. So I remember those movie experiences. I remember going to see Arachnophobia in theaters with my neighbors and bringing a bunch of fake spiders, tossing them into the crowd at the exact moments the spiders jumped out. Like those things, I mean, you could do at home, all the gags to kind of but like to have it with 100, 200 other people, have that reaction and laughing and just like shock and awe. It's just those are things that I'm going to remember, and that's why we try to catch as much as we can in the movie theater. I know we can't go to every movie that comes out, and most of the time we have to enjoy it at home. But when we can, we try to get out there and see the movies when it first comes out, like day one. We don't because it's hard to stay off the internet now. It's hard to get rid of spoilers.
well,
So
I was just, yeah, you said the key word, spoilers.
even with streaming, like if you know that X movie comes out on in September and it may not come to streaming until January, like you have to go those 3 4 months without having to find a video or a post or something, which is impossible. Um, so it almost forces you to a person to want to see it in the theaters, which isn't a bad thing. Just because they can't stand the spoilers, which occur
Well, I
way too
think
often,
to your
which is
point though,
destroying. What's that?
to your point though, I think this really all started with Marvel. I mean, if you really want to, as you were talking about Man of Steel, one of the theatrical experiences I will always remember is that first night of Endgame,
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
and like
Holy crap!
that for I, so anybody obviously, but I mean just like Infinity War. I remember when Infinity War ended, and everybody. So I've watched, and you guys can go back if you want. You can watch the 5 year, because it did turn 5 this year. Go back and watch the 5 year retrospective I did on that, because I sat down and watched it with the director's commentary on it, and it was fascinating to listen to Russo brothers and everything else. And then they were all trying to figure out, oh, what's this gonna be? What's that? And I remember Endgame. And when you talk about thunderous applause,
Mhm.
the minute that hammer starts to go, and then it just flies back, and the place just explodes. And those moments, they're just unmistakable. And I think that's something we miss sorely with um, in those 2 years. And I think that's the whole reason why. you had like a movie like a No Way Home do so well, because not only did it have a great story, not only did it wrap up all of the different Spider-Men with Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, and by the way, they weren't just cameos, they were intricate parts of the story.
Right,
And
right.
then you had, Tom Holland in there, and it was emotional. And then you had, Andrew Garfield's character. I'm not going to give away everything in case people haven't seen it, but there are certain elements to it that it ties a nice bow on everything, and that's why it ends up making, $1.5 billion.
I
And
think it's safe to say we could talk about it. I think if
yeah,
you
well,
haven't
I
seen
mean,
if you
like
haven't
when
seen No Way Home yet, I mean,
well, when Zendaya is falling and Andrew catches her,
yeah,
and it's like, and so it's just amazing, and he's those are actually real tears, and it's just, because a lot of people, because he lost Gwen and everything else, but it's just how they wrapped it up so well. And it's ironic because when you think about it, that opening weekend, and I we were talking about this off air, I'm starting to get away from this, but the projections for that, they said, oh, well, it's going to do over 100. No way anybody thought it was going to make $250 million opening weekend. And I think it's like the seventh or eighth highest grossing domestic of all time. But it's those kind of reactions, it's those kind of theatrical things that you can't buy. You
I
just
just
can't
wish
buy.
I just wish we had technology back in the day to be able to record those moments in the theater like
Well,
people do
yeah,
now.
I mean, that's where your YouTube comes in, ironically enough,
Because
when you get,
yeah,
the theater reactions, and it's just some of them, it's almost like it brings you back to it that night, and it's just like, wow, it's crazy. I mean, I was just watching. It's funny. I was just watching Endgame. So both Endgame and Infinity War were both on at the same time, and I was kind of flipping back and forth. But it's like, I actually tried an experiment. To your point, so I was watching. So a lot of people don't know this, but TNT, they paid over $1 billion to get all of the rights to all the Lucas films. So that's why, on weekends you'll see like Star Wars marathons.
yep, yeah.
Every weekend, right? So they paid over $1 billion to Lucasfilms to get all of the rights for that, for basically, Star Wars, Empire, Jedi, and then so that was when Force Awakens came out, and then what you had was, so they got the rights to Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. So I tried an experiment one time, and it was this. So Empire Strikes Back, it came on, and of course, just like millions of other people, I have Disney Plus. So I said, you know what? I'm going to try this. I'm going to watch this right on Disney Plus at the same time. So I went through and I scrubbed all the way through to the exact point that it was in the film. And I watched it on Disney Plus.
Okay.
And when I finished the film, it was to the scene where Han was about to be lowered into the carbonite.
Oh wow.
And that just tells you how many commercials and how many ads there were in that film. And I went, and once you watch it once and you know where the commercials are, you're like, okay, you can just, go use the restroom or whatever and come back.
Yeah,
But it's
because they're
like,
always at the same time. Like they're
exactly,
always at the
exactly.
same
But
time.
it's like, I couldn't believe that. I mean, that's like they had Endgame on the other night, and it's a three. So the TRT, or the total running time of Endgame, is 3 hours and 2 minutes. They had that as a pegged for 4 hours.
Yep.
They had 58 minutes of commercials. I went, I'm good. Thank you. So, I mean, yeah, and look, I understand once again. Hey, Meadow, how are you? Good to see you.
But metal.
Um, but it's one of those things where, and look, I get it because they got to keep the lights on, but
Yep.
at the same time, it was crazy because, um, and that's one thing in a movie theater that it's nice that you don't have to worry about commercials. I mean, well, okay, let me rephrase that. trailers, I suppose, are commercials or at the beginning of the movie, and I think that's a. So let me ask you this question: we're talking about theatrical experiences. Do
Okay.
you mind because I know a lot of people, they're like, oh, there's too many trailers. There's blah, 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 blah. Do you mind there being a lot of trailers in front of the movie that you're about to watch in the
I
theater?
think sometimes there's not enough, Dave. Like
Okay.
I enjoy. I don't. I mean, in my local theater, we have a lot of local commercials, and
Hmm.
it seems like those are always on repeat. But once we get into the trailer portion of it, and that pre trailer advertisements are all done, I like the trivia because they'll have like a little
Hmm.
trivia spots where you know it'll show images on a screen, it'll go blurry, and then who is the actor or something, or this actor's. Just the trivia part is pretty fun. We'll play that with each other. But once the trailers, I'm getting locked in already. I'm already locked into the movie, and I don't. I want more. I want more trailers, and I'm glad that trailers before, from what I remember, were only specific to that movie that was playing. So you would never see a DC trailer. Like now, you can see a DC trailer in front of Marvel, but you would never see something like that back in the day. You would see pretty much advertising what that company is going to be putting out and coming out new.
Right. Right. I
Now
see what
now
you
you
mean.
get the mixture of any movie, anything goes, and I enjoy it. I mean, I know I've
Yeah.
already seen it online. I've already seen it on TV, but to see it again, I don't mind if there's 6, 7 trailers. I'm already planning that time to go to the movies. That's already included. I know that if the movie's 2.5 hours, there's probably 20 to 30 minutes of trailers, maybe. So I'm already including that with my experience.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because there are some. I mean, I love the trailers. I'm always there, ready to go, ready to watch them, and so it's interesting because the when Oppenheimer and Barbie, and like I said, I did back to back that
Hmm.
day. Um, there were only two trailers in front of Barbie, right? And there were seven. There were
Oh,
seven for Oppenheimer,
wow.
and I'm like, wow. And I just thought that was fascinating. But
Were they
you
different
know,
movies, though?
oh yes, oh yeah.
Okay.
So the
Okay.
ones I saw for Oppenheimer, I saw Dune 2. I saw The Creator. I saw the um the new Exorcist movie that's coming out. I saw Kills the Flower Moon. I saw Napoleon. I saw there were two other films. But yeah, and that basically that tells you something. But so I actually one time I got bored. So if anybody is fascinated because they say why are these trailers so long and this is so it's interesting because the very first trailer for the Dune movie we were both talking about just a few moments ago, the the very first one was 3 minutes and 14 seconds, and you go, wow, that's a long trailer, and it is a long trailer. So I actually sat down one day, it just because I was bored and I wanted to, and I read the requirements for the MPA. So anybody who's familiar with the MPA, it's a Motion Picture Association of America. And so by the rule that what a studio can have one trailer over 3 minutes, all of the other trailers have to be under 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So they can have one, I think, 2 minutes, and this was subject to change, but I think it was like 2 minutes and 10 seconds to 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and you can have as many as you want like that, and then you can get one per year, and that can be over 3 minutes, and it's just
I think the Exorcist trailer was about 3 minutes as
yeah,
well, if I
hmm
remember correctly. But I'm excited for that movie. I'm
yeah.
excited. I'm a big Blumhouse fan. I can't help it,
Oh,
but
I can't wait.
I feel like Jason Blum is doing it right, and if if he gets his hands on Nightmare on Elm Street, oh,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
oh.
Well, anything's got to be better than the 2010.
See, I don't mind the
So
2010.
yeah, and you know what? I have to go back and revisit it. I have to go back. I saw it in the theater years ago when I have to go back and revisit it. But yeah, no, it's just fascinating when you're talking about trailers because it's one of those things that you don't want to give too much to the audience, but you want to give them just enough.
Yep.
And
And
you have to walk that fine balance.
we got Jay in the comments. He says, "I like the trailers, but hate all the ads at home." And Metal X says, let's see, pull it up here. I don't mind them. Information, informs me of the movies that I didn't know about yet, which is true. And then Metal X asks us, let's see here. Are you guys gonna see Rebel Moon when it comes on Netflix? The trailer comes out tomorrow.
Interesting. I know of Rebel Moon. I haven't. I might check it out. I mean, it will be interesting to see. I think that's um, the big thing
Yeah.
as far
Did you
as
see that
what's.
they came out with the titles for the Rebel Moon movies?
No, no, I have not.
Yeah. So the first one's gonna be called The Child of Fire, and then the second one's called Rebel Moon Part Two: The Scar Giver.
Interesting.
We were talking about that last night with Matt. Like Matt, I brought it up to Matt in his stream about if he was excited for Rebel Moon. It's pretty funny, and then he was trying to think of he heard some news about it, so that's when I mentioned to him about the titles. So I am excited for Rebel Moon. I like Zack Snyder. I think Justice League, his cut is one of the better movies I've seen. I'm a big 300 fan. Obviously, Man of Steel. Like I can't I can't say no. Anything if it's the stuff we get from Star Wars right now. I think if Rebel Moon takes off and becomes a hit, it could be refreshing, and it could force Lucasfilms or Disney to put out better Star Wars content. Maybe rethink their strategy
Yeah,
going forward because I'm not sure we want to. I'm not big for a Ray movie. Like
I
what,
think the
15
problem
years?
is that you have oversaturation with Star Wars. So, you know, the thing is that, and Marvel's got the same problem.
Yeah, and
Okay,
that
but
ties in. That ties into streaming and movies, by the way, because we can go off on that tangent with as far as saturation of streaming
yeah.
content and theatrical content. So yeah, I'll let you continue.
So thank you. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things where I think Star Wars in itself, the last is if you look back over the last couple of years, what Star Wars has done. Okay, we've had Endor, which I have not seen, but everybody said it's top notch. You've had The Mandalorian. You've had the Book of Boba Fett. You've had I think there's one other series I'm forgetting.
Kenobi,
But
we had Kenobi.
Kenobi, thank you. Yep. So, which actually which wasn't bad. So nonetheless, there's a lot of saturation there, and they're throwing a lot at the wall to see what sticks.
Yep.
And I think that when the last films, while yes, they made all this money and it was everything else, it's the story for some of these wasn't quite what we thought it was going to be for the last 'cause I think everybody can agree Force Awakens was fantastic, but at least for me, when I was sitting in the theater, I was watching this and I kind of nudged my friend and I said, "This is Star Wars all over again." And look, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I'm not saying that. But that being said, so what Star Wars and Lucasfilm is doing is I think that there's a lot going on. And they have to really do good quality storytelling with Star Wars
Yep.
now. That's their main issue. And I like Kathleen Kennedy. She's a good studio head, but there is a lot of turmoil, for lack of a better word. The
Oh,
creatives,
yeah.
and we're not going to document everything here, but the point is that there is a lot of things up in the air. You have writers coming in, they're going. You have directors coming in, they're going. And one thing Marvel does well is they have a plan. and they stick to the plan no matter what the cost is. And if they do it, great, and they just move on from it. And I think that Star Wars tries to get too finite. And when you getting back to the streaming angle, when you have all these things streaming, people like stop. Let's just because that's
Breathe,
where
breathe.
Star Wars made their money. That's where they make their money. It's their feature films. So
Metal says Ray puke emoji, curse emoji. Nah, I'm good. The actress is cool, but the character is not that interesting. Plus, she's a Skywalker. Her story should have been much better.
I think this is where what J.J. Abrams, and he's already come out on record and said this, he wanted Ray to be a nobody. That's what he wanted. And when Last Jedi came out, there was a lot of retcon going on. And so what ends up happening is, so anybody who's not familiar with a retcon, it's when one filmmaker does one thing and the other filmmaker that comes in for the next film basically reneges or takes away from that. And then so when Last Jedi comes out and Abrams comes back, he's like, okay, I've got to do something completely different. And subsequently, that first trailer we got, you know, with the Emperor's Laugh, and I'm thinking to myself, what are they doing? This is 1983 all over again. And then you have, for what it is, and it just went okay. And I rolled with it, but there were way too many coincidences in that film. And not to say it was a bad film, but okay. And so that's why all of these films, the next set of films, are highly, highly, highly anticipated for movie fans because they want to see the continuation. Like, okay, where does Ray? We understand it's 15 years later, but where does she go from here? What's the new threat? Right?
And that's the thing. What's the stakes? If a movie has no stakes, I and that's why Rise of Skywalker just doesn't. I don't know. I think it's a good movie, but I just think
I
it
mean,
just
I
I
saw
don't
it
know.
twice.
I saw. I mean, I've seen it lots of times. I just the ending is just
Yeah, no, I
Ray.
know. I know. I
Ray should
understand.
not be that powerful. Like, what
Yeah.
do you do? But that's for another day, another
No, yeah, yeah,
discussion.
absolutely. But I
Um,
think that's the
but
thing, though. So I think that, and going back to the streaming aspect, I think the Marvel, their saturation is their problem too is interconnectivity, and that has to do with their streaming and everything else. So, um, you know,
see, I'm happy with the Marvel shows. I know a lot of people have their issues with one particular or a few. I understand the characters enough, I know Kevin Feige's vision that he wouldn't. I don't think he would put something out to fail. That's not his. He would just take it off, and he's done that. He's already proven he's done that. So the shows that are out now, and the shows that will be coming out, I think what Agatha is, House of Harkness is a show coming out. Um, I know Armor Wars was a show, but that's going to become a movie now. So there's a theatrical release.
yeah,
If they had a balance between streaming and theater and the story connected in such a way where it doesn't, you're not in 2025 and then flashback to 1984. If you just kept the flow of connectivity, not saying you can't touch on the past because we all have, there might have to be an origin established or something like that, but don't keep the whole story disjointed to where we're watching this movie and we're expecting to see these characters show up, maybe, or even hinted, then to find out it's 5 years before certain events that, you know, blip, snap. I mean, I don't know. Like some people call it the
no,
blip.
I understand. I understand what you mean.
Some shows call it the snap. So like, what is it? Is it the blip or is it Thanos' snap? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah. I think they have two different. I think it depends on who you talk to, right? I mean, it's the same thing. It's just it's this. it's just two different names. But I'll say this: I think that one reason Phase Four was not the best thing in the world for a lot of people is because there were a lot of introductions.
Hmm.
Like, if you take a look at Phase Four, I mean, besides the Spider-Man No Way Home film, you had Eternals, you had Shang-Chi, you had, a couple of these other films that were introducing brand new characters. And one thing that Marvel did well in their first phase was they introduced the big bad right away.
Hmm.
I mean, at the end of the Avengers, you knew exactly where they were going. You didn't have to say anything. It was just turn of the head, the smile. Okay, you know it's Thanos. And he only appears two or three other times, all the way up to um, Infinity War. He's in twice in Guardians of the Galaxy, and then the one post-credit scene. Fine, I'll do it myself.
He's also
That's it.
in the isn't he? Isn't his ship at the end of Thor
Right,
Ragnarok as well?
Ragnarok. Yeah, right. And
Ragnarok.
that's where we pick up. And that's where
Yep.
we pick up
Infinity War.
Infinity War. So the point is, though, they had the person established. When we get to Phase Four, we don't know who the big bad is. Okay, and that was one of the key when Marvel put out Ant-Man Quantumania, which, by the way, for everything it's worth, it wasn't that bad of a movie. Michelle Pfeiffer and the Jonathan Majors scenes were outstanding. Jonathan Majors at his height was fantastic. But the
And it did
problem
well on
is,
streaming. It did well on
yeah, it
streaming
did
too.
very well in streaming.
Yeah.
The problem was that they're like, why are they putting why are they putting the big bad in an Ant-Man movie? And they put him in too early. And now I understand this ties into Loki and everything else, but it's
Hmm.
like, okay. So that all being said, this is where problems start to arise, and you're not sparsing it out enough. Um, we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting because this new phase, there are two or three movies coming up that everybody is like chomping at the bit to see. The first is Blade because that was announced all the way back in like 2018. Okay.
Hmm. Yeah.
You got Fantastic Four, which, the rumors are running rampant. Like, who's going to play Sue Storm? Who's going to play whoever it is? Because people forget. I mean, speaking of like Deadpool, okay? Deadpool 3 is coming out, okay? Hugh Jackman's coming back, and this has a chance. This is where Ryan Reynolds is a genius because he ties everything together.
Yep.
And it's like now we're getting to see all these things. And, you
And it
know,
will be a billion dollar. It will be a billion
oh,
dollar
I have no
movie.
doubt in my mind. I
Two
have no
billion
doubt
dollar
in my
movie.
mind. So, yeah. That being said, though, the reason why they haven't introduced these things is because they had to wait for the rights to run out because
Yep.
they were 20th Century Fox properties. So the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, all of these things they had to wait on. Now we're starting to slowly, you know, and the whole reason why that 2015 Fantastic Four movie was made, okay, was to keep the rights. And it was
and,
a
and I didn't.
debacle.
Yeah, I didn't
Well,
like
maybe
Doctor.
not
I
a
didn't like that.
debacle, but
I didn't
it
like
didn't
Doctor
do well.
Doom. I didn't like
Oh,
Doctor
Doctor
Doom.
Doom is fantastic. Doctor Doom is
No,
well, no,
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 not in that. Not well. I mean,
no.
if you go
And
all the
that
way back to the Ian Grunfeld Jessica Alba one, that
Julian
one was better.
McMahon. Julian McMahon was a better
Yeah,
Doom than the guy they
yeah,
got in the remake.
yeah, yeah, definitely. So it's really going to be interesting to see. But those two films, and then you've got Deadpool 3, and so they've got a lot of things on the slate coming up. And I think
Mhm.
this is while Phase 4 wasn't the best, they really have a chance to make a lot of waves in Phase 5 and beyond. And of course, we're still waiting. We're still waiting to see what happens with this whole Jonathan Majors thing.
Yep.
And that's a big, big question mark.
Well,
And
I know they've already committed to Secret Wars to it being the three characters we saw at the end of Quantumania.
yeah, so it's going to
Whether
be
that's whether that's
fascinating.
Jonathan Majors or whether that's someone else, who knows?
Yeah. Well, I think the way they're going to explain that is because at the end of that cutscene, at the end of Quantumania, and they could just it's kind of what I tell people. It's like Doctor Who. You know how so Doctor Who, what they do is they have the new Doctor come in and they just exchange bodies, everything else. That's exactly what you're going to have.
Hmm.
So it's going to be that facet of it. So I think, but yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens and how everything plays out. And um, you know,
So Metal says, "Man, I still want a Captain America movie with him returning the stones." Shaking my head. That's money right there. At least they're. That's what I believe.
I think the thing is that, and that was kind of explained at the end of Endgame, right?
Yep.
Where he's like, when they were trying to figure it out, and then you see, um, the whole house scene with Haley Atwell, and because he went back to the time that he, originally wanted with his love. I think that it's one of those things too where you couldn't just have Cap do it. I mean, hypothetically, to Metal's point, you couldn't just have Cap. You'd have to have other people in there doing that.
See,
And
and I think that's where Deadpool 3 is going to mock. Yeah, potentially, it would be cool to see him go back, but not be Captain America. It won't be Chris Evans. It'll be Captain America from the failed early Fox movie that came out what in the 80s or 90s.
yeah,
What
yeah,
if you
yeah,
saw
yeah.
that? What if you saw that as
That would be hilarious.
or like maybe it's he Deadpool is traveling through time and Johnny Storm, what are you doing with these stones or something? Yeah, like he
Yeah,
makes some kind of a crack joke, some meta joke about Chris Evans.
yeah,
I could see that, or maybe Doctor Strange 3 with incursions. Maybe Captain America going back, maybe cause an incursion, and we could maybe see that maybe play out, or maybe briefly explained in Doctor Strange 3. Possibly, I don't know.
yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I think
Definitely had repercussions on the MCU, no doubt
definitely,
about it.
definitely, definitely. And I think that it's one of those things where I get it. Um, and you gotta wonder too. Would Chris Evans even want to come back? Right.
Hmm.
I mean, that's a whole thing too. I think that's a big thing too. I mean, there was speculation for a while that Robert Downey Jr. was possibly going to go show up in Secret Wars, or it's like I hope not, because that would take away from the arc.
Hmm.
Because Marvel basically what they did, they were genius for 15 years, or 14 years, or however over so many movies. Because to have the last words of the '08 film be "I am Iron Man," and then you had go all the way to 2019, 11 years, over 30, X amount of films later, and to have him speak those words, the last 4 words of his existence is "I am Iron Man." The connectivity there is just unparalleled,
Yep.
and I think that bringing him back would be, you know, it would take away from it, and people, will say, well, I mean, and that's the whole thing with Spider-Man. He's dealing with that's what Homecoming is. They're dealing with the loss of Tony Stark. He's even saying, he cries and he runs into Happy's arms. And he's like, I miss him so much. He's like, we all do, you know. But he wanted him to be as individual as possible. And I think
To,
that's
to
an important thing.
to bring it back to streaming and movies, I wouldn't mind seeing some of those stories played out, maybe like in a what if season.
Mm,
Maybe having what if the Avengers got back together, and what if Iron Man didn't die, and what if Captain America didn't pursue Peggy and want to be a normal, what? And that's perfect for that. I mean, I
yeah,
could see them possibly doing that because I enjoyed the first season of What If, and that's one show I'm looking forward to
yeah.
coming
No,
back.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I think those are all viable things that you always, when one event always happens, maybe it's a year or 2 or 6 months or whatever. You're like, well, what if I didn't do that?
Hmm.
What if I had taken the red pill over the blue pill type of
Yeah.
thing?
Yep. Yep.
How would it have changed everything? And that's how you get good quality stories. Unless you have a story already there, and I'm just gonna bring it up. It's like Rogue One. Everybody knows episode 3. Everybody knows episode 4. Well, what's Rogue One? Rogue One is about that's in between story, or what I like to call it, episode 3.5,
Hmm.
where they go after the plans.
Yep.
And that's, and keeping on that topic, Garth Edwards is coming out with a new film called The Creator, which I'm really interested in seeing in
Okay.
September. But yeah, no, it's there are always stories out there. Doesn't matter, it can be whatever. You just have to you have to be very careful in which ones you do. And I think that if they're done right, you know, this is why we need our writers
I was
when it
just
comes
gonna bring
down
it
right.
back to the. I was just gonna bring it back to the strike, and your thoughts on if this thing keeps going on beyond September, October. Well, obviously, it's beyond September, October, November. What if it goes into 2024? Do you see streaming or theaters gaining more, having a stronger, being stronger? Do you think independent films will be taking over more so than Hollywood? What are your
I
thoughts on the strike and how it affects both those two topics?
so I've always said that. So first and foremost, we have enough films in 2023 that we're going to be fine
Hmm.
for the rest of this year. Whether it is Napoleon, whether it is Killers of the Flower Moon, whether it is Dune 2, whether it is The Creator, whether it is Equalizer, whatever. Once we get to a certain point in 2024,
Wonka.
Wonka too,
Yeah.
it's still going to dry up it's going to start to dry up a little bit,
Mhm.
but to that point, I think that it's I foresee this going until the end of the year at least. Okay, because I think that this is one of those things where I'll be honest with you, I don't even know if we have an Oscars this year. I mean, I would be shocked if we did. We might get this done, you know, and even if it is done at the end of September, let's say, then it's going to be, everybody's getting it back in, productions and everything else. I think that streaming has the potential to really take off again. I mean, really take off because once we get to a certain point, I mean, yes, do we have things in 2024 people are looking forward to? Absolutely. But I think to quench their thirst, so to speak, I think people are going to want to go back to streaming because it's convenient, it's cheap, it's I mean, doesn't matter if it is a Netflix or an Apple or an Amazon or whatever else. People are
Mhm.
going to want to do that, and I think that there has to be a major tectonic shift, and there very well could be your independent films, your smaller films, start to make a comeback. And I mean, you're always going to have your tent poles. You're always going to have your big budget movies, your Marvels, Warner Brothers, everything else. But I think you're going to start to see more and more and more independent films start to come up because they're not under SAG. They don't have to worry about marketing. They can do things, and to a certain extent. And I think that that's going to be prevalent. And you know,
The one thing I've seen is from recently reviewing a lot of these fan films is once you put that search into whether it's Google or YouTube, you get recommended so many more independent fan films you've probably would have never heard of if you didn't make that one search or watch that one movie. Um,
so it's
there's a
like any.
plethora. It's such a catalog. It's
Oh
just
no,
a
you're right. The
plethora.
plethora is there. So it's like YouTube is like anything else. So if you were to put in hypothetically, if you were to put in real talks into the search bar and you watch one of my videos,
Mm-hmm.
then on your recommended page, you're going to see at least a minimum of 2 or 3 videos of mine, because that's what it does.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So one of the things with YouTube that I have found is the keywords. They have there's not everything, but they do have something to do with it. Okay. And so what you want, imagine like a circle. Okay. So you want it as broad as possible, but you want it as finite as possible. So
Mm-hmm.
for example, if you're saying you don't want something as super finite as, let's say, Robert De Niro movies, okay? But you don't want it to be so big as to say mobster movies,
Yeah.
okay? So you want something right, that sweet spot right in between, let's say 1970 mobster movies,
Mm-hmm.
and then that gives you everything across the board. Um, so there's keywords there. For example, when I was always putting out videos, the 3 or 4 keywords that I always invariably put in, okay, were movies, Hollywood, um, you know, theaters, and something else. And now those were always those last 3 or 4 keywords. Hollywood is huge, movies are huge, but you want
Mm-hmm.
something a little more finite. So, and then you always put in, like, whatever it is, David Steele, Real Talks. You always put it in personal stuff first, and then start to broaden out. And then, but yeah, so it's one of those things where YouTube and, everything else, it's all done on algorithms. And so what YouTube wants is you watch one of my videos or your videos, for example, you get recommended 3 or 4 of your videos. I then watch another couple of your videos. At that point, it's like, oh, okay, I should just subscribe, because I'm seeing so many of them. You hit the subscribe button, that's how you get a new subscriber to your channel. And that's how they think. So getting back to your whole thing about independent movies, you type in an independent movie film, you're going to be getting all these films. Okay, so let's say, you know, I don't know, whatever the film is. There's a channel out there that talks about independent films. You then go, oh, okay, wait a minute, all right, and then you watch a couple of more of their videos, and then you'll subscribe to their video, because that's all you're seeing. That's all
Yep.
that the main stuff is. So I mean, there is a trick. YouTube knows what it's doing, and I definitely don't know what the algorithm is, but
Hmm.
what I do know is this is what my experiences. So to your point about independent films, the more independent films you watch, the more you're going to be recommended.
And I think
Okay.
I think they're gonna start taking off. I think any time right now, and I've had this conversation with many people previously, that the strike while the iron's hot. I mean,
Oh,
we're in a
definitely.
strike. We're in a strike. This is the prime time for someone to pick up a camera phone or pick up a, any type of digital camera and just start recording, and edit. I mean, hell, I started doing it. I started doing it with my short story podcast. So I mean, you just gotta take a risk and do it. And
No, absolutely.
if
And
you
I said
if you
this
if
to
you
you.
fail, if you fail, you're either gonna learn from your failure, and you're either gonna move ahead or you're gonna give up. So.
Well, here's the thing, and I said this to you off the air. Like half the battle is just getting started.
Mhm.
There is a lot of people, I mean, and when it comes to podcasts, there are so many podcasts out there on so many different things. But do you know half the podcasts out there? They're crap. And you know why? Because of the audio. They don't take the time to actually remaster everything, or to edit, or to get the ticks out. Because the way you have to approach a podcast, at least I do it, is you have to think you're the listener.
Mhm.
I don't want to listen to anything that's got bad audio,
Right. Right.
because I'll just turn it off immediately.
Yep.
I mean, you can be the best host in the world, and you are, but it's just one of those things where, it's if your audio is crummy, people are gonna be like, what is he saying? I can't understand them. And they're just going to turn it off. And, but if you have good audio, if you have it decent, and you say, and you have, then you can start to get a structure together and say, okay, this is, movie this or whatever the subject matter is. People go, okay, let's give it a chance, and then they'll maybe listen to the first one, and as long as the listener can see that you're getting better, they're like, okay, I'll give this person a chance, because that's what it comes down to. And you're right about the video. Everybody has a phone, but it is a whole lot harder to make a short film, even like a 5-minute film, than it is a podcast. You can whip up this podcast in 45 minutes. Take the audio, remaster it, get out the text, boom. We put it up tomorrow. It's that with a film, there's a lot of other things. You've got music, you've got dialogue, you've got to get actors, you've got doing this and everything else. And no, I agree with you though.
And that's the thing. The transcend from what you're saying. So like if you get a podcast with bad audio, you're inclined to probably turn that off at that moment. Maybe revisit at a later date if they were to do something different. But it's like movies. If it's a bad movie in the theater, are you really going to walk out of the movie theater?
There
Or are you
are
gonna,
only
or are you going to sit there? I'm not going to spend $20 or even more than that if you're taking a guest with you. It's between popcorn or between concessions and a ticket for a group of two is probably close to $35-$40. I'm not gonna walk out of a movie theater if the movie's bad. I'm gonna give it a chance. I'm gonna sit through. Maybe it might catch me at the end and say, "Hey, it's a really good movie. This part sucks, but it may pull me back." When you're streaming at home, you could just click,
Yep. Bye bye. That's it. See you.
buy, change the channel.
Yeah.
So again, you're gonna give it a chance. Like that's the difference. That's another difference between movie theaters and streaming. If you don't like something, you can quickly and financially, fiscally responsible to it's not going to waste your money, especially if it's a free service like Tubi or like Pluto or Freebie or something like that. You could just change it. But if you're going to go, so I think you're about to say something about when I said walking out of a movie theater if it's a bad movie. Did you walk out of a movie, Dave? And if so, what movie did you walk out of?
Okay, so there were 3 movies I've walked out of in my life.
3 movies.
Yeah, two of them I was too young, so I'm going to take defense. One of them was Chariots of Fire in 1984.
Okay.
The second one was the Legend of exactly, the Legend of Tarzan, and I was too young to. It was 1985, but the one I
Okay.
walked out of that I did on my own cognizance, and I tried it, was Ocean's 8.
That was the Sandra. That was the female
Sandra
version.
Bullock, Anne Hathaway, Aquafina.
Yep.
I watched. Oh, I want to say about 35 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm like, I can't do this. And because so at the beginning of the film, so anybody who has not seen Ocean's 8, okay, Sandra Bullock is supposed to be Danny's sister, and Danny is dead. And so she goes to visit his grave, and so she's trying to figure out what she's trying to do with her life and everything else. And had they had a couple of cameos in it, I'm not saying long-standing cameos, like a couple of minutes here and there, whatever. Maybe a
Mm-hmm.
Brad Pitt pops up, maybe a Matt Damon shows up, maybe a anybody.
Yep.
That would have worked. But I tried and I tried and I tried. I just couldn't do it. And I'm like, I can't do this. And I walked out. And I haven't seen it since.
I was just going to ask
Because
you.
yeah, no, I haven't seen it since. And it's one of those things where it's not that I think it's a bad film, because it was, look, huge cast, shot very well, everything else. It was the story for me. I
Okay.
just couldn't get over the story. I mean, if you're going to do an Ocean's film about the sister, okay, you at least have a flashback.
Mm-hmm.
At least have a flashback where Danny and her are talking about something. Maybe it's about a scam that they were going to run one time, that together, or maybe it was a scam that Danny did, or that he didn't do, or something. But there was nothing, and I just couldn't get behind it. And once again, not a bad film, shot very well, but it just didn't work for me.
Didn't work
And
for you.
I'm not, you know, so I mean, it happens. I mean, I've sat through some pretty. I, I always go back to it, but like one of my favorite movies of all time. I mean, not as like Silence of the Lambs type, but is Steve Jobs, and with Michael Fassbender and Kate Winslet and everything else.
Mhm.
And so, if you look at his decline of his career, one of the worst movies he ever did, and I sat through the whole thing, I promise you, because I wanted to see it, was The Snowman. And I got up and I just walked out and I was silent. I was like, what did I just see? And anybody, I'm not going to I'm sure it's on Tubi right now or whatever. It was so bad. But the thing is, I wanted to give it a chance. And
Mhm.
it caught my interest. And it was like, okay. I mean, it had Michael Fassbender and in the decline of his career. And I'm really hoping this next Goldwyn movie comes out. When this comes out, it's going to be halfway decent with Taika Waititi. But it's like, you know, but no, I've sat through some really bad movies.
Yeah,
And
I think Ghostbusters
2016.
2016 just oh, I know that's probably everyone's go-to movie. I tried. I've watched it twice. I've watched it
Yeah, I did.
twice.
You
It's
know what I did?
like
You know what I did that with? I did that with Bridge of Spies. So I saw Bridge of Spies. So anybody who's not familiar with Bridge of Spies, it's Tom Hanks plays a lawyer, and so there is a somebody that gets shot down over the United States, and he's supposed to be a Russian spy.
Mhm.
And then there's an American one in Russia or Berlin, and this is during World War II, and he's sent over to Berlin to actually try and get this guy released. Anyways, long story short, the actor who played the spy here in the States, his name was Mark Rylance, and I remember watching the Academy Award nominations that night, and they announced his name. I'm like, how did he get nominated? Now you got to understand this is the year of Creed. This is 2015 or
Mhm.
2016. So Sylvester Stallone had won the Globe. He'd won the Critics' Choice Award. I mean, not say it's locked, but as locked as could be, right? He had never won an Oscar. This was going to be his swan song. Okay. When they announced, and the Oscar goes to Mark Rylance, Bridge of Spies, my jaw hit the ground. I think I had to pick it up for like 2 minutes. I went, what? Because I'd seen both movies. I said, how could they? I went, okay, okay, okay. I'm going to go back and watch this movie again because I want to see. And it was about a 6 month period. I had seen it in theaters, and I wanted to go back and see if it was because we've all done this before. We've seen a movie that said this was bad, and then we go back
Yep.
and we wanted to see if it was that bad. I did that, and I couldn't believe it, and it was as bad as it was the first time. I'm like, but
Even with trying to focus on the character to
yeah,
see why
and
he
I
earned those
just went,
honors. Yeah. Yeah.
I just went okay, and that happens. And it's not the actor's fault. Sometimes it's the creator's fault, and I think that's where it fell down. And because look, I think when it comes to filmmaking, the Mount Everest of or the Mount Rushmore of filmmaking, you've got Spielberg, you've got Scorsese, you've got Coppola, and then you could probably throw in like a James Cameron. I mean, those two in themselves have changed cinema for the last 50 years. Coppola did what he did with The
Maybe
Godfather.
Kubrick. I would probably put Kubrick on there.
Yeah, Kubrick on there, Eyes Wide Shut, The
Yep.
Shining, Full Metal Jacket. I mean, whatever you want.
2000.
And
Yep.
it's like, okay, that all being said, that's not one of his. It's like Warhorse, for Spielberg.
Yep.
It's not a great. you know, oh my god film, because everybody goes back to an ET or Close Encounters or a Jaws or Jurassic Park or whatever else. And it's like, I love Ready Player One. But
Hmm.
that's not what War Horse and Bridge of Spies. Those are not two of his like unbelievable movies. And so, you know, but that all being said, it's just a matter of taste and
Yeah.
who you like.
And that's where independent films are good because most of them do come to streaming. They do not generally get a Hollywood release, theatrical release. They have been lately. 2023 has been the indie return to theater, but generally they're on streaming, and generally you know what to expect from independent film. So when you critique it, you kind of give that wiggle room, knowing it's not going to be this huge, massive production. It's just a couple friends getting together and shooting a movie. It's that's where I love independent because I could say any movie's bad and people get butthurt about it.
Yeah, I
Independent
mean,
films though, like you can as long as you can justify your reasoning, they'll be happy you just watched the movie.
yeah,
So they don't even care what kind of rating you gave or critique you if you didn't like it or not. They're just thankful that you had eyes on the movie and that you watched it. You took the time to review
exposure.
it.
That's the key word you're
Yeah.
looking for. It's
So
exposure.
so yeah. So that's where I think independent is going to have a big boost 2024 and beyond. I think you're going to see it just catapult to the top, and you will see them taking home those big honors.
Yeah, I mean, all you got to do is look at a film like Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Hmm.
Okay, Everything Everywhere All at Once won 7 Oscars. It was the closest to winning the Big Five. So the Big Five is Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Screenplay, Best Director, and Best Actress. Right? It was so The Silence and Lambs was the last film to do it. Okay, back in '91, it's made '91, one '92. That was the closest that anybody has come to winning the Big Five in 30 years because it
Wasn't
was different.
wasn't Parasite close to that as well? I thought Parasite.
It might, it might,
I thought it had a good run because that was a pretty like
no,
film
yeah,
I
it
didn't
might have.
expect to be that good.
Yeah, no, it definitely won Best Picture, and I think it won Best Screenplay or Director. So it was up there too. There have
Hmm.
been several, but my point is about the independent film is that you take a film like Everything All at Once, that movie just caught fire, and
Hmm.
film festivals are forward because where a lot of films are debuted are film festivals.
Yep.
And if it has good word of mouth coming, I mean, take a look at something like Air that came out this year. I loved Air.
Oh, I
I
loved it
loved
too.
Air. So, and that ended up making 90, ended up making its budget back plus VOD and everything. That's probably going to turn a profit, not a large one, but still. And it put Alex Conray on the map. So, I mean, the point is independent films, they go to film festivals. If they're good, you're going to get the exposure. And then it's just like lighting the fuse, and then it's just going to catch fire, you
Hmm.
know? And then you're going to have films that really, really do well. And then they're going to start to, if that film doesn't do well, what will end up happening is the next time that filmmaker comes in with a film, it's going to be hotly anticipated. And
Hmm.
then that from that film festival, you're going to see all of these things. It's going to get a wider release. It's going to get a bigger budget. It's going to have better actors in it. Next thing you know, that rinky-dink $1 million film is now huge.
Yep.
I mean, a film that I'm looking forward to at the end of October, but honestly had almost a $2 or $3 million budget was Saw.
Oh
People
yeah.
don't realize Saw only had like that was came out like 2003, 2004. That had like a $3 or $4 million budget. Actually, it starred the guy. He played the director of the thing in Mission Impossible, but that starred the actor, the same actor from The Princess Bride. And so, and he'd been working and whatever, but that Look at that now. It's a huge, 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 huge
It's one of my
franchise.
favorite franchises. I could watch that from
One,
start to finish all the way, like every day
I
if
was
I wanted.
actually considering doing a rewatch series for the
Oh,
channel.
nice, nice,
Yeah,
nice.
but here's the thing. Why that film work is the majority, 75 to 80% of that film was shot in one room. That's it. That's it. Always different camera angle. It was low. It was high. It was two shots. It was close up, but it was all shot in one room. Films that do that, like a Reservoir Dogs, unbelievable movie. Watch Tarantino's career. When you're able to do a one room or majority of a one room type of thing or one
Hmm.
building, it saves you so much money on location. So much money. So when that film does do well, and really you can almost say that Saw is the movie that launched escape rooms. I mean, whether wherever you go in the United States,
Hmm.
you're seeing escape room or this or escape room. That's what started it. I mean, yeah, you had other things like Final Destination and Paranormal Activity, but that's what started escape rooms. you know, I mean, I actually,
Even going back to Rear Window,
yeah,
going back to Hitchcock. I mean, it's just taking it to a different visual experience. Obviously, filming back then and filming now, obviously, huge difference. Um, but like you were saying, James Wan. I mean, he's brilliant, and again, going back to Blumhouse, they're forming this partnership where they're gonna be making these movies together. Jason Blum and James Wan are gonna be a duo to be reckoned with. I think they're gonna take over Hollywood
um,
more so than they already have.
yeah. Have you seen one? I think I've probably asked you this before. Have you seen the Black Phone?
I did, yes, yes.
Yeah, I love the Black Phone. I love the Black Phone. And Ethan Hawke was, I mean, everybody, of course, knows him from Training Day, but, I love that movie.
Oh
Love
yeah,
that
Black
movie.
Phone. Happy Death Day.
Yep.
I love those films. Even was it Freaky with
Yep.
Vince? What's his name? Vince. I can't think of his name from Old
It's gonna,
School and Vince Vaughn.
oh, yeah.
Vince Vaughn played the serial killer opposite of the female. Switch about like his take on movies and switching them, like Fantasy Island, and turning it into a horror movie.
Yeah.
It's just
Fantastic.
is great. Even the original content, like you said, Black Phone. I mean, it's what he does with a story and a camera is just unreal.
Yeah. And I think horror is really one of those genres that really doesn't get enough love. I mean, because, you know, everybody thinks about the four or five major films, right? You got Halloween, you got Nightmare on Elm Street, you got Friday the 13th, you got, you know, and it's like, okay, well, how can they redo those movies? But
Hmm.
it's one of those things where, I mean, look at Scream. Speaking
Yeah.
of Nightmare on Elm Street, Wes
Yep.
Craven, that was a juggernaut that's still going strong today. They're making Scream 7, and it's like, but that it was in '96, and you go, my God, that's fantastic. And Wes Craven was unbelievable even thinking of that. But it's one of those things where original horror films, they're not given the love.
Nope.
I mean, that's why, like, we talked about it earlier. I'm dying to see this Exorcist movie, dying to, because it's a whole new twist on it and everything else. So, yeah, I think he's going to. When you know what your element is and you do it well, then I think that people are gonna they know what you do, and they're like, yeah, I can't wait to see that.
And
So
especially it's going to be a trilogy, so I'm really excited to see where they take it. If do they bring back Regan to make an appearance? I have a theory about that. We can probably discuss that another time.
yeah,
But yeah, I think it's going to be something. I like the trailer. I love the trailer, and I'm excited for the movie.
yeah, yeah. It's and just to put a good bow in this, I would say this: the thing is, we both love movies.
Mhm.
Okay, and it doesn't matter what genre, and doesn't matter, the length of it and everything else. It's, is it a good movie or not? And like you said at the top, if you don't like the film, and I always say film is subjective, come out with a number of things um, where why you don't like the film. Maybe it's because of the way it was written, or how the characters were, or whatever it was. It wasn't shot, or it wasn't filmed in a particular way that you cared for. Those are all legitimate excuses. I think
Yep.
we've gotten to it today where people just say, "Well, I don't." They say, "Well, I don't like it. I don't have to justify it." And I think that's where the haters come in, and you get them in every fandom, whether it's the Snyderverse, or whether it's Star Wars, or whether it's in Marvel, or whatever it is.
Yep.
And it's, I always call those people the fringe. They're true believers, because it doesn't matter. You can tell them the sky's blue, and they'll think it's green.
Yep.
And the thing is that we movies are hard enough to make. Good movies are even harder to make. When you have a good movie and then you follow up, this is why sequels are so difficult to actually make and be successful. And we all love movies. And movies, I think, really, at the end of the day, they tell us about life, because there's everybody's life is a movie one way or the other, because they've gone through heartbreak or joy, or loss, or whatever. But at the same time, the some of the dialogues in movies you can relate to yourself, and you go, oh,
Or it has such an impression that you can remember the entire movie and
oh,
recite every
that's
line, like with Rounders with
verbatim.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it's interesting. I was just watching that the other day, and one of the greatest scenes in that film is, so, not to go too deep into it, but there's a scene where Mike goes into a bar and he's talking with the professor that he's supposed to be doing this thing with.
Yep.
And so he's like, they were talking about what happened with the other night. And so he's like, well, it was all together a different trick. He's like, you just have to work hard to prepare. So basically, the professor, who is Jewish, he's like, so he tells him the story about how he had to leave the yeshiva. And, you know, he's one of the rabbis said, you have a 40-year-old's understanding by the time he was 12. By 13, he couldn't be, a rabbi. He's like, why not? He's like, I never saw God there. He said, you couldn't lie to yourself. He's like, no. My parents were heartbroken. They sent me to live off with distant cousins and everything else. And he's like, I studied the law. I learned all the minutia and everything else. And Mike asked him, so if you had to make the same choice again, what would you do it? And he says, what choice? And he basically says, the last thing I took from the yeshiva was this: you don't choose your destiny. Your destiny chooses you. And just back up for a minute. Just
Yeah.
absorb that for a minute. Let that go over you for a minute. And you go, wow, that's
That's deep.
powerful
That's deep, and
stuff.
you wouldn't expect that.
That's deep.
From a movie from a movie like Rounders
Yeah.
about a kid who loves poker, and that's his main
Yeah.
thing. That yeah, like you wouldn't expect those deep conversations.
But that was it. And Martin Landau just knocked it out of the park with it. But I just went, but think, if when you actually think about the dialogue, you go, wow, he's right. And that, when you start to really apply that to your own life, and you think about that and go, our destiny chooses us, we don't choose our destiny. It's like, and you hit it on the head. That is a deep statement. It's like, wow. And it makes you turn everything upside down and go, yeah.
And I think we all have a worm friend in our life at one
Yeah,
point or
no,
another.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I thought their dynamic was exceptional. Um,
Yeah, no.
like I said,
That
I've
whole
seen that movie a
movie,
thousand times. Yeah, yeah,
that whole movie is it's underrated. And it's funny because that, just like a story behind that, is that Miramax actually pulled that film from theaters after only a month because they thought they would hurt Matt Damon's career. Subsequently, Norton ended up getting um, he had just come off doing Primal Fear, which he ended up getting the Academy Award nomination for. And so it's one of those things though. When this is why I love the backstories, the
Mhm.
BTS stuff, because when you know that and then you watch the movie again, you go, okay, I know the little nugget behind that, and that's why they did it, and it's fantastic stuff.
And the cast is crazy. John Turturro, Famke Janssen. I mean, it's
Christian
crazy.
Mall,
Rich Mo.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a fantastic thing. But g- my point was going to this: in every single movie you watch, there's that one piece of dialogue,
Hmm.
that one scene where it just hits you, and you go, "Wow," and it makes you think, and it's deep. And I think that's what movies do, and that's why we love movies more than anything else. They can entertain, they can be action packed, they can make you laugh, they can make you cry, but they can also be powerful.
And
I
that's
mean, you
why it's
take
important to get out and see a movie, whether you go
no,
to the
absolutely,
to the theater or whether you're sitting in your living room or you're on a plane in your phone. Watch a movie.
yeah.
Uh,
I
you
mean,
may find a gem. You watch something that you've never seen or dislike, and you're forced to watch it, and you can find a different level of affection for it and affinity. So you never know. That's what
no,
movies
I
do.
mean,
They could
yeah,
they could
no,
turn they could turn you like that.
I almost, truth be told, there was so Saving Private Ryan, of course, the masterpiece, 1997, 98 masterpiece by Steven Spielberg. Truth be told, I walked into that first 10 minutes, I was that close to walking out. I was like, "Oh my god, I didn't." It was amazing. I sat through the whole thing, of course. I actually went back the next week and I saw it again. It was that good.
Hmm.
Like, it was a mind-blowing experience. But and that's why Spielberg is such a great director, is because he knows he can start a film out and be very slow, and but he can punch you in the nose. And that's the thing. Like, if you ever actually have an hour and a half, and this goes to anybody watching this, but if you ever actually have an hour and a half and you're really interested about the man himself, watch the documentary Spielberg. It's it really gives you an insight. I mean, going all the way back to why he made the Raiders movies,
Hmm.
to how he met Kate Capshaw, to why he made films like Schindler's List, and I mean, the graphics behind Jurassic Park, or just later on doing films like Ready Player One or West Side Story, or anything, and it really gives you an insight into the man. And yeah, no, films, I love movies.
And that's the movie I
And
gotta watch. I gotta watch The Fablemans. I have not yet seen that, and I know it just came out of like what, a year ago or a few years ago. I have to watch that because
yeah,
I am a Spielberg fan. I just something I just never caught in theaters, and I gotta add it to my list. I definitely have to get on that because I heard nothing but great things. And that's the thing when it comes to movies. Please don't take everyone's opinions to to heart, or cement that is that's the fate of the movie, because what I may say, what you may say, might be someone else's experience totally polar opposite. So please watch a movie with no pre-thought, prejudgment. Go in there with a blank canvas, enjoy what you're seeing, and then come out with your opinion.
try
Two,
not to
two,
watch the trailer either. If you really want to do that,
yeah, yeah. I mean,
I mean, yeah, I know it's a bold thing. I mean, it's baby steps, but seriously, if you want to
yeah.
go in completely green,
Hmm.
don't watch the trailer. No, you can listen to the news about the movie and everything else, but do not watch the trailer, because I think what trailers do are two things, and quickly, is A, their marketing tools, and we both talked about that earlier, but
Hmm.
B, their first impressions. So when you see a trailer for the first time, it doesn't matter if it's for Dune 2 or Deadpool 3 or whatever it is, it gives you an impression, and you go, okay, because you all know what Denis Villeneuve's done, whether it's Sicario or whether it's Arrival or whatever it is, but you know what kind of filmmaker he is. With something like a Dune, for example, you knew all of this stuff behind it, but if you watch the trailer, you're like, okay, I know what this is. You go in completely green, you're like, damn, that was
Yeah,
really,
I have a
really
friend that doesn't. He refuses to watch any trailers, which
it's
I think if they had trailers and they kept it to like 45 seconds, just gave you a little bit of taste, make you want more. That's what a trailer should do. It shouldn't
well,
tell, it should
that's the
tell you the
thing
whole
though.
story. Yeah.
So the reason why studios put out 3 trailers, the first trailer is to get you interested. So
The
if
tease.
for
Yep.
the creator, okay, take that for example. If that's the first 90 seconds, it's like okay, fine, just get it's out. The second trailer, it wants to give you a few more plot points, and maybe it wants to give you the villain and whatever else. That last trailer, that wants to give you everything. It wants to get you more interested, even if you were. It wants to give you the plot points, and it wants to give you a little bit more. So that way, but doesn't spoil anything. So when you go into the movie and you're just blown away by it, you're like, that was an awesome movie. And
Yeah.
that's what trailers are supposed to do. But I think that, sometimes we prejudge movies, even we were both agreeing on this, is that we prejudge movies even before we see a trailer.
hmm
It's
I agree.
like you can't even do that. So because the creatives don't even know what it's gonna be, let alone you.
Yep. Yep.
Anyways, but yeah.
No, I think
So
this was an excellent discussion. I had a lot of fun, and I think we covered not only the live streaming and the movie theater, but we covered movies in general, almost like the entire process of from marketing to distribution to release dates, things like that. So I had a lot of fun. Before we go though, Dave, let the world know where they can find you at,
okay, so
and
you can find me at um my where I usually am is is Twitter or X or is what it's called. It's gonna be at wannabe rounder. That's WANNABEROUNDER. I do have a YouTube channel, as he brought up before. It was called Real Talks. So I basically I it's more of an entertainment news type of thing, but that could be changing. However, I do have a couple different series on there. I've got Mission Impossible one. I've got Perfect Movies. I've got a bunch of other things. I'm looking to get back in the game probably at the end of this month and maybe the beginning of next month. I know I'm taking a couple months off, and yeah, no, I movies in my life. This is what I want to do for a living, and maybe it's not making movies like a Spielberg or a Scorsese, but it's talking about movies. And so, um, yeah, I love doing it, and I want to thank you for the opportunity of coming on today.
oh, no problem. And everybody, the links to David's Twitter/X and his YouTube channel are in the description. So make sure you go drop him a follow on Twitter. Go drop a subscription over on YouTube. The dude's constantly in Twitter Spaces. If you want to hear anything about movies or pop culture or anything that's going on in the world, head over to Twitter. You'll likely find David in one of those spaces 24/7. It seems about. But and as far as me, my links are in the description. You can catch me here on YouTube, of course, Twitch, DadPooLAJ. I just started my podcast on Spotify, uh, DadPooL's Dreadful Tales, well, episode 4. But yeah, all the links to all our platforms are in the description. Go check it out. Um, and also leave a comment on this video. Let us know what you thought about the video. What's your take on streaming versus the movie theater? What are some of your most memorable moments from either going to a theater or seeing a movie online at home? Let us know. I mean, let's keep this conversation going. It doesn't just end because the video's over. We can just keep this going on, and hopefully, David, I get to have you on again in the future, and we can talk more movies.
Definitely. I look forward to it. Thank you very much.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you, and everyone have a good night. Uh, go watch a movie. Go check it out. Go see something. It could be an animated. It could be whatever. Just take that hour and a half away from your life and relax and enjoy. Don't get so uptight about a movie. Don't listen to all these people. Go get an opinion for yourself. But I'm Dadpool, and I hope you guys had fun. Have a good night. Until next time.